All right, Alex, thanks for doing this with me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah. So we had talked about doing a live nutrition session, which I understand requires some vulnerability. And so thank you again. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited.
Cool. Yeah, I am too. So I'm basically going to treat this the same as I would treat a client who came in and signed up for an hour with me. And we're going to go through, I'm going to get to know you a little bit more, your lifestyle, meaning your schedule, your exercise, what your goals are. And then we're going to go through your diet log. And so if anybody's listening to this just on the podcast, know that it's also on YouTube as a video so that you can see Alex's diet log as well. And then by the end of it, we'll have some pretty concrete suggestions for you moving forward. So, how does that sound?
That sounds awesome. Super excited.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so tell me about yourself. What are your intentions for working on your nutrition today?
Um, well, I've noticed that with a heavy training load, I feel like I'm not recovering as well as I could. Some of that is for sure, I think, the load at times, but some of it is also what I'm eating. Especially after you had me log the 3 days, I realized it was interesting to see everything I was eating and be a little bit kind of surprised. It
How
just in
so?
just how I was like, oh, I thought this was probably enough, but it very much didn't seem like it was enough of the right things that I should be eating. Like it was interesting to just kind of the way I really like to kind of dive in and look at everything. And I saw the carbs, fat, and protein, and seeing how I was eating not as many carbs as I thought I was in any given day, which feels like I should probably up that a little bit more.
Mm, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting insight. Um, it's really rare for me, honestly, to hear a client say, I don't think I'm eating enough carbs because, right? Because as climbers, we're all like, we need to cut carbs so that we don't gain weight. So tell me about that. Like, what's your background information on that? And like, kind of what were your numbers and what do you think they should be? Or,
I don't remember off the top of my head what the numbers were, but it just like was disproportionately, I think, low
okay.
compared to like fat was there was so much more fat than I think I needed to be consuming. Um, and the protein number was right around where I thought it was. That's one that I've always been pretty conscious and tried to be really good about getting enough protein in any given day. But the carbohydrates were like just as I said, it seemed disproportionately low, whereas the fat was extremely high. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, excited to get in there and see what's
Hmm.
actually going on. But before that, I'm going to ask you a million questions. So are you ready for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So let's just get some basics out of the way here. How tall are you? How old are you? And how much do you weigh, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 28, 5'10", and 187 pounds.
Okay. And are you comfortable with your body composition, your weight, all of that?
Yeah, right now, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Great. And so I ask these things partly to just weed out anybody who might be underweight.
Hmm.
And a lot of times people come to me wanting to not only optimize their nutrition for performance, but also to lose weight. And so that's just one of the things that I usually ask about.
Hmm.
Okay. And then how long have you been climbing?
Uh, 8 years now.
Okay. And you live, we already talked about this, but tell me where
Yeah.
you live.
I live in Keystone, Colorado.
And then you said that you go back and forth between there
Yeah,
and the
back
Front
and forth
Range.
between here and the Front Range of Colorado. So yeah, a lot
So
of driving.
do you climb outside much?
Yes, every weekend.
Okay.
I've spent the last 2 months and 3 months in Rifle.
Okay. Every weekend in Rifle. Okay. And what is your typical climbing, what are you trying to red point? Or what are you red pointing? No, you mean,
Uh, 12D, 12C, 12D.
okay.
So, yep.
All right. And it sounds like you've just started a training program. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I did in March would have been the start. So, yeah.
Okay. And tell me about that. So one of the things that is very important to this is figuring out like how your nutrition, as you know, lines up with how much exercise you're doing. So
Hmm.
first of all, tell me about the changes that you made in your training in March relative to what you were doing before that.
Um, so before that, it was just a little bit of hangboarding, some kind of thought out training around building a bit better fitness, building max strength. So it would be like a hangboard session a week, which would be usually repeaters. Then I'd climb on a board, so typically the moon board. Um, and then an endurance session, which was usually just getting on a rope in the gym. And then once, of course, it was warm enough to climb outside, that switched up a little bit. Once I started this training program, it was actually more so hanging twice a week instead of once a week. And far more thought out for sure. So the hangs included max weighted hangs at about 80% of max, as well as a 15-second, so a long duration hang with added weight as well. Um,
Okay.
and then that also includes limit boulders as well as some bouldering efficiency work. So spending time on a steep board, climbing boulders that are typically easier for me, but focusing on, not cutting feet, things like that. And then the other day of my week would be a power endurance day. So it was like feet on campusing, doing ladders like 4 minutes on, 3 minutes on, 2 minutes on, as well as some sort of arc workout. So after the campus ladder, reducing hopping on something really easy and just climbing around for like 15 to 20 minutes, with Wednesday being a dedicated gym session. So all I'm doing that day is strength and mobility work, not climbing at all, so lifting weights, and working on my mobility a little bit more,
Okay.
with Saturday, Sunday being climbing days outside then.
Okay. All right, cool. And so it sounds like you became more intentional with your training mostly
Mm-hmm.
and you increased it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of going in shorter cycles. So 2 weeks on and then a week of rest, 2 weeks on and then a week of rest.
Okay. Who are you working with, if I might
That's
ask?
with Lattice.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. So I'd love to get a schedule from you. So your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what just vaguely what you're doing on those days. So what happens on Mondays generally?
Rest.
Okay.
Rest. I'll go for like a walk or something just to move around because I do work from home. But otherwise, it's the first day after getting back from rifle. I'm usually quite sore and
Yeah.
not excited to do anything.
Yeah.
um, then Tuesday is my strength session. So that's my max hang, and more of the board climbing, so the limit bouldering, all that stuff. Wednesday, my gym and mobility day, and then Thursday is a power endurance slash kind of basic recovery day. Uh, Saturday, Friday is a rest day again. Saturday would be a projecting day, so hop on projects, and then Sunday is a volume day. So I either quickly red point or just go climb things that I've climbed before and have some fun.
Nice. Okay. So you're resting Mondays and Fridays. You're doing, this sounds really balanced. Good job. Like so many people come to me and they're doing so much. And it seems like you're really keeping it together here with not overdoing it. I mean, that's always relative to the person. But so yeah, that's like my main reason for asking about that is to figure out how much exercise you're doing so that we can tailor that with your diet. Now, the next thing I want to know about is your daily schedule approximately. I understand you work from home most of the time. And so can you just tell me when you wake up, when you eat, when you're working, when you're training and climbing, and when you go to bed?
Yeah, so I get up at 7 every day, start work shortly thereafter. I'll usually eat breakfast around 8:30 or 9. Um, and then this is where the schedule gets really exciting. So Mondays and Fridays are my rest days, and fortunately, I don't have anything else going on in the evening. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I typically also work my second job at the climbing gym, so I'll be instructing classes those nights. So the training on Tuesday and Wednesday is usually in the morning around kind of a lunch break or break that I can take. So I'll eat breakfast those days, get my training session in, and then usually come back and do lunch around 1. Lunch is usually typically around 1 every day. And then dinner on rest days is usually around 6, but on days that I'm at the gym, it's like 4:35. And then let me think. What else did I miss? Did I
Do you
miss
have
anything?
do you have a snack in there anytime?
Uh Randomly as I remember. Usually it's just quite a busy day because it'll go from work, train, back to work, make sure I then it's like mad dash to get work done. Um then my last little break to get some food, then go to second job on those other 2 days. Rest days, I'll usually kind of snack randomly throughout the day. It'd probably be mid-afternoon, like 3 o'clock. Yeah, I
Okay.
think,
And then
yeah.
what time do you go to bed?
Oh, I try to be in bed around 10 every night and fall asleep shortly thereafter, like read a book or something and just fall asleep.
Okay. And do you sleep well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you wake up at 7, you have breakfast 8:30 or 9. You are training from 9-ish until when? Like noon?
It'll go like noon to 1 depending on how long it takes me to warm up that day. Um,
Okay.
so some days it's a little slower than others.
All right. And then one lunch and then 1 to 4:30 or 1:30 to 4:30-ish work on
Hmm.
these climbing days or
Hmm.
the second job days. And then
Yeah.
4:30 or 5, is that when you're driving?
Yeah. So like because I can work remote, I'll usually do my training session and then hang out at the gym and just work. So I'll after I make breakfast, I'll usually drive to the gym and then work finish my workday at the gym so that I'm already there. Uh yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Very efficient working from the gym. And then you work and then you have dinner at 6-ish.
Hmm.
Okay. Wait, why would you have when would you have dinner at 4? Oh, you would have dinner at
So
4:30 right
the
before you go to
Tuesdays
work.
and Wednesdays, it's like I eat like 4:30 between 4:30 and 5:30 those nights that I work at the gym as well because that's the only time I have to eat before like 10 p.m.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Um, so what else can you tell me about your goals with your nutrition? Like what exactly do you want to accomplish today?
Uh, Truthfully, I'd love to just kind of optimize energy levels, right? And I think the hardest thing I struggle with is that my schedule is so dynamic, call it. It changes a lot, and it's hard to get into as much of a routine. I try to stick to it as best as I can. Um, yeah, I think that's the primary goal for sure is just trying to understand how I can better fuel myself and better fuel myself on climbing days too, because I've certainly had some days where especially the outdoor days where I feel great all day and other days where um my nutrition has been I ate a bunch of candy and then felt horrible the rest of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And in the beginning of this, you said that you wanted to work on your recovery. When
Hmm.
you say recovery, or poor recovery? What does that look like for you? What kinds of things are you experiencing?
Usually I'd wake up in the morning after a hard training day, feel a little like groggy, sore, kind of lethargic. Um, but I feel like days that I think I've nailed my nutrition and like eating well, I don't necessarily feel that. Or I
Okay.
feel a lesser version of that because like there's still going to be some fatigue with the heavy training days.
Okay. Great. All right. This is all really succinct, really great information. Are you, random question, on any supplements or medications?
No, the only supplements are like collagen and protein powder that yeah.
Okay. And what about caffeine intake every day?
Probably 2 cups of coffee, 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day.
Okay. And anything else? Any energy drinks or anything like that?
Kombuchas randomly. Really
Okay.
like kombucha.
Okay. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. So I'm going to look at your diet log now. So before we started this recording, we
Mhm.
got into Alex's MyFitnessPal. And so I'm just going to get in there. If I can find it. Okay, so we have 3 days of logging, which is really great. Thank you for doing that. And I'm looking here on MyFitnessPal. This is the app that I really like to use just because I can see clearly, at least on the computer rather than the phone, like your calories, your carbs, your fat, your protein, sugar, and we could have even changed this sodium to fiber to see what your fiber intake is. I can see per food item, per meal, and per day. And then because I'm a member of MyFitnessPal, I can click here at the bottom and toggle it into percentages rather than grams, which is also really helpful for me because it helps me see what's going on here. So I can see straight away that you're getting a good amount of protein, 124 grams. Um, you are having 3 meals a day, and this day you had a snack. And this was Monday, so this was a rest day, I'm assuming, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
this was a rest day.
Okay. And I can see that each of your meals has a lot of protein. This is a really common mistake that people make, is not having enough protein in each of their meals. Like their breakfast will be low, their lunch will be low or moderate, and their dinner will be really high or something. And that usually leads to people feeling really tired through the day, not having great performance because they're just not getting enough nutrients in the day. So this makes me
Hmm.
really happy to see that you're getting a really good balance of carbs, fat, protein in each of your meals. Your dinner is a little bit bigger than your breakfast and lunch at 899 calories rather
Hmm.
than 560 and 560 for your breakfast and lunch. And it's really common, but sometimes with recovery, it's a matter of, and you do have these snacks here. So this is good because this is kind of making up for that. So you have 460 calories in snacks. And about when were those eaten? Do you remember?
Uh, Probably mid-afternoon, being a rest day. Yeah, because lunch was probably a little earlier that day. Probably
Okay.
like noon and then like 2 for the snacks.
Yeah. And I think that, having a snack in the mid afternoon for you is always going to be a good idea because,
Hmm.
especially if you're having these 560 breakfast, 560 lunch, because we need to make up for some of that.
Hmm.
For the how low those calories are. It's not low, but for you being, like a rather decent sized dude, man, what that was so unprofessional of me to call you a dude. But you know what I mean? Like you need quite a few calories, and 560 just might not be totally cutting
Hmm.
it. And so I'm glad that you're having these snacks. Now, the snack I will say was almost, well, it was mostly carbs, some fat,
Yeah.
and a lot of sugar. And
Hmm.
because you're so active, I'm not super concerned about that. And because you're not trying to lose any weight, I'm not super concerned about it. Um, but you could actually have more protein in your diet. And this is an opportunity where maybe you have a protein powder and water, like one scoop or half a
Yeah.
scoop or something, just to balance that snack out, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
That makes total sense.
Okay, so I've been talking for a while. Do you have any thoughts about what I've said so far in the beginning?
No, that all makes sense, and I definitely I feel like the hardest part with some of those low calorie like breakfast and lunch is wanting to eat more for those meals because
Right,
it's
like you don't have an
do,
appetite.
yeah, there's just no appetite for
Mhm.
those meals, I guess, is
So
yeah what I struggle with the most.
when do you have your coffee in the morning?
I usually wake up and the first thing I do is make coffee.
Yeah, that's why you don't have the appetite for the breakfast. And this is super common too, because coffee is an appetite suppressant because what
Hmm.
it's doing is telling your body that something stressful is happening. And so you're secreting adrenaline, you're secreting cortisol. And so that's what decreases your appetite partially. And so a lot of times, what I'll ask people to try is just having the coffee with their breakfast so they have a bigger appetite.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Especially if you've already had 2 cups by the time you have breakfast, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just take a look at here at what you're actually eating. So the breakfast is sourdough English muffin, jelly, egg, 2 eggs, turkey bacon, butter, fizzy Vantage, coffee, non-dairy creamer. So the fizzy Vantage you're just put oh, it's
Just
collagen. You're just
yeah, it's
putting it in
collagen
your
just straight in the
coffee.
coffee.
Okay, gotcha. Great. I don't have much to say about that. I mean, I'm always going to try to encourage people to have vegetables, in their
Hmm.
each of their meals whenever
Okay.
possible.
Yeah.
So if you're having an English muffin sort of egg sandwich with turkey, is that what I'm seeing there?
It's usually the like bacon, the turkey bacon and eggs, and then the English muffin with like jelly on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be a stickler about that, but sometimes we can make breakfasts that have like an egg scramble with rice with the turkey bacon in it too,
Hmm.
with vegetables. And so sometimes you could incorporate that.
Hmm.
And then lunch you had 2 slices of bread, cheddar, turkey, olive
Yeah.
oil, mayo. So a sandwich
Just
in
a
between.
sandwich. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to look at a couple other days, but I'm really happy with how much protein you've got in here with the turkey and the cheddar. It's a really nice amount. And the carbs probably could be a little bit higher. So, like, you can see the difference between your breakfast and your lunch. Your breakfast is 39% carbs and your lunch is only 28%. So, when we start to talk about percentages, when we're talking about just optimizing performance um and maintaining weight, we're looking at around 40% carbs as a
Hmm.
baseline, right? And then
Hmm.
on top of that, when you're climbing or training, we add to that, but 40% is our baseline. So coming all the way down to 28% for your lunch, this is going to make you hungry for this Pop Tart and scratch a little
Yeah.
bit a couple hours later, like you said,
Hmm.
because you legit didn't get enough carbs in this meal. But it's also not, if you hadn't had this snack and then you tried to go train or something, it's just not enough fuel for that session. So you probably won't feel as strong and it's going to affect your recovery.
Okay.
So that means that you could add, some crackers to that, and I always like to get most of our carbs from starch sources rather than
Hmm.
sugar. So I'm not saying, or, you could have an apple or something like that with this lunch, and that
Yeah.
would sort of make up for that. And then your dinner, brown rice, chicken, tortilla strips, black beans, avocado, cheddar. That sounds delicious. Again, there's no veg in there. So
Hmm.
you could add, even like
Yeah. No,
onions,
onions and
some,
bell peppers or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
greens, whatever you want.
Perfect.
And this sandwich too, you could add some greens to that. You could have some carrot, like baby carrots or something on the
Hmm.
side, things like that. Um,
Cool.
Speaking of fiber, because the vegetables are obviously gonna provide you with some vitamins and minerals, but also some fiber. And so I have to ask, how is your digestion?
It's mostly fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't had any crazy anything that I
Okay.
can think of.
All right. So no bloating, constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, things like that
Not
very
really,
often.
no.
Okay. Great. So let's take a look at another day. And we're not going to go into quite as much detail here, but well, maybe we will. This is quite different. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. This was a day that I was at my second job, a training day, and just kind of struggling to get everything in.
Hmm. Okay. So this day on breakfast, you trained right after.
Yeah, I've trained right after breakfast.
Okay. So you had for breakfast this time was a Pop Tart, Fizzy Vantage,
Single.
collagen,
Yeah.
English muffin, egg, sausage patty, pork, American cheese, and coffee. So, and it was bigger, which is good. It's great because you
Hmm.
need that. And you had a little bit of sugar from the Pop Tart, which is good because normally I'm not into having much sugar in breakfast just because it tends to spike people's blood glucose and then it falls and then they get hungry and they get cravings and it's just a mess for the rest of the day. But this breakfast, you had 15 grams of sugar, which is not even that much, but it probably helped you with your workout. And you had more carbs in general in the form of starch at 61 grams. So, like, these percentages were still 40%, but the grams overall were higher because this calories were higher in this. So it was 623 as opposed to
Hmm.
560. So that's good. And then you worked out for 3-ish hours.
Yeah, I think that day was a little closer to 4. Just took a little longer to warm up that day.
Okay.
Tuesday is typically the biggest session of the week.
Okay.
Hmm.
Right. So when I hear you say that, I'm like, okay, well, what is he doing to compensate for all of those calories that he's burning? And granted, when we're climbing and we're doing the things that you're describing at the gym, it's not like we're marathoning or like training for a marathon. The calories that we output for training for climbing, like uh, in general, if you're climbing continuously for an hour, which nobody does, but just, theoretically, you're
Hmm.
going to be burning around 600 calories for that hour of hard climbing, right? And then weight training is a little bit different, and it doesn't even sound like you're doing weight. Well, you are just
Yeah,
in your
that's
jeans.
Wednesday.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it's not that much, and there are online calculators to figure out exactly how many calories you're burning. But the fact is that you have 2,443 calories on this day on Tuesday, and on Monday on your rest day you had 2,479. Now it's a little bit. So my main concern there is you're not getting any more calories on that Tuesday than on your Monday.
Hmm.
Having said that, I want to point out that after a weekend in rifle, because this day was a Monday that you had were resting, you are going to be hungrier, and so it's not that surprising that you're eating the same amount, but I am concerned because you've said that your recovery isn't that great, and so I do think you should be eating more on these days that you're.
Yeah. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. As I said, the hardest part, and I think this is part of it is on me for lack of planning. As you can see, dinner on Tuesday was Chipotle, because I forgot to make dinner, ran out of time. Well, I don't fully remember, but so it was just like struggling to get whatever I could eat that day.
Yeah. Yeah, and your snack, you just had the Fizzy Vantage protein powder. And what time was that out? Was that right after?
Yeah, I think that was right after training, or
So,
yeah.
and this is super common too. So you're like, I just trained, I really need protein. However, the research actually says that what we need after training, and in your case, it's within around 90 minutes. But for your case, it's definitely like after those 3 or 4 hours of training, you need to eat a full meal, which I think you did have this lunch
Yeah.
after that, which is great. But we need a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. So
Okay.
I'm really glad that you got this protein in, and your protein overall for that day is great, but you also needed some sugar in there. And you could have used some sugar the whole way through. So like having a water bottle that has like a full scoop of Scratch Labs rehydration mix plus
Hmm.
the Fizzy Vantage in it, or like some protein powder that goes well with that, or even collagen, I think
Hmm.
would be a great addition to when you're training, because then you have this constant influx of calories and sugar that's going to help you with all of the things that you're doing in that session, while also not making you, feel heavy from eating food. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not even going to add that many calories, but it will add some, and that's great. Because after this session, I have a feeling you felt pretty depleted.
Yes.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you only had this 590 calories and 56 grams of carbs, and it just wasn't enough.
Hmm.
Yeah. So then we're like, oh, okay, well, it's just going to affect me this day, but it's not. The next day, that's why you're going to feel tired and
Hmm.
groggy and lethargic and sore. So it's really simple, right? Like you're doing most things really well. I'm not even concerned about this dinner that you had, the Chipotle, because I mean, Chipotle is fine, like whatever. It has some not the greatest oils or whatever that they use,
Hmm.
but the fact is that you got 51 grams of protein in that meal, you got 100 grams of carbs and a bunch of fat. And that meant that you made up for anything that you were lacking during the day, which I
Hmm.
would rather have you make it up during the day when you should, like have a big snack. So my question is, you said that you didn't plan quite as well as you could have, and you're kind of scrambling for food. So when you're sitting there at the gym, what could you do differently to prepare a little bit better? I know
Uh,
it's really easier
I
said than
think
done.
I think that's a matter of just making sure on my rest day I'm like, instead of Chipotle, just cooking dinner, like meal prepping, because I have the time, instead of, oh my God, I forgot to make food, or I didn't make food. I need food now in the like 30-minute window I have between finishing my full-time work and starting my part-time work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, right?
Hmm.
It's so hard when you're climbing both days on the weekends. You're exhausted, you're driving, and so you don't have those down days to really prepare foods. So how can you make this super easy on yourself, do you think?
Well, since I usually cook dinner on Monday night, I think I just have to cook more
Okay.
and make sure I have leftovers, and
Okay.
can like some well balanced leftovers and bring that with me to the gym and kind of eat it throughout the week. Especially
Yeah.
if like Monday is usually a grocery store day too, so it's like go to the grocery store, just buy a little bit more, and make sure I have food for those 2 nights in a row that I know I'm going to be kind of scrambling a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
because I have to work in the evening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. I love that answer. And I think that's the best way of meal prepping, because who has time to just meal prep like just on its own? So whenever you have time to cook, yeah, make enough food for 5 of you.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then you don't have to deal with the rest of the week really. Or at least 3 of you, like you're saying.
Hmm.
So that's a great idea. And let's see, the dinner that you had beef on Monday, because that's what we're talking about making more of, right?
Yeah.
This is great. It's the only thing about this dinner is when we start to get up into like 100+ grams of carbs in one meal, I start to get just a little concerned about insulin levels and your body being able to deal with that. And that's
Hmm.
part of why I like to have all of your meals be more even. I think
Yeah.
it's fine. Like you can handle this amount of carbs in this day, but it would just have been better if some of these carbs had been in your lunch and breakfast
Hmm. That makes
instead.
sense.
Yeah. So, but this dinner, that Mexican dinner, that'd be perfect for the rest of the week. And then Wednesday, that's your mobility strength day, right?
Uh-huh.
Mobility.
And this is another day that I didn't get to make it back home Tuesday
Mhm.
night, so I was scrambling, as you can see, the random burritos, and then some weightlifting and yeah, once again, a lack of preparation for this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this day you did have more calories. You had 2,700 calories. And
Hmm.
I imagine that's because you were really hungry from
I
your,
was hungry all day.
yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's because you didn't eat enough the day before.
Hmm.
And so that makes total sense. So then the other thing though about this day is you didn't get quite enough protein. And so I'm imagining on Thursday, maybe you even felt a little tired. You
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
your carbs were only 36%, your fat was 46%. And one of the things you said in the beginning was that your fat is a little bit higher than it maybe could be. And I
Hmm.
agree. Like if you had had less fat and more protein and more carbs, it would have helped you more because the
Hmm.
fat, yeah, the fat's great. But with all the strength and power work that you're doing, you need to focus more on carbs and protein
Hmm.
because that's what's fueling those anaerobic activities. So let's see here. The fat, the fat's coming a lot from these burritos,
Yeah.
which makes sense. It's like guac and oils and whatever. So this
Hmm.
is just like you said, another planning issue.
It is a poorly planned Wednesday,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to like knock you or
Oh
anything.
yeah, no, for sure.
But this day, on the day before your fat, this is pretty perfect. See these percentages? This It
Hmm.
was 42% carbs, 35% fat, 23% protein. And for you, that's pretty great. I love that actually. It's just that you didn't have enough calories on that day.
Okay.
So this 95 grams of fat as opposed to the following day when you didn't prepare and you had 142 grams of fat. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
going to make a big difference.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think we have the gist of it. And again, I just want to commend you. Like you came into this with a really solid diet. It's like actually uh notable. So good job.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I know. Yeah, it's so crazy because people are like, I know I'm eating well and I'm trying really hard. So what am I doing wrong? And it's just these tiny little changes, right?
Hmm.
Okay,
That's
so questions or comments?
from me.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
totally
Do you
fine.
have any questions or comments?
Um, I not so far. Uh, most of what we've already talked about absolutely makes sense. Fitting in some more carbs, trying to fit in some more vegetables uh throughout the day, I think would probably also help. I've noticed that when I incorporate vegetables in breakfast, I usually don't. I feel like more full, stuff like that. So that's definitely, I think, really really easy to act upon.
Yeah. And the feeling of fullness is something that some people really don't like right before they're going to train. So maybe it's like on the days when you're not going to be training or climbing right after, unless you don't mind the feeling of fullness, then maybe you keep them out. And then
Hmm.
on other days you put them in. So it doesn't have to be every day.
Hmm. Cool.
What else?
Um, I I think that's the big one right now. Yeah, yeah. I guess what would it look like timing out these meals a little bit better,
Yeah,
right?
I think
Or
you're,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I think I'm just rambling right now.
Okay. Well, if you had had any severe issues with timing, I I would have said something, but to make small tweaks to it, your breakfast is great. I'm so glad that you're eating a proper breakfast right before you have that giant workout because a lot of times people are not doing that and then their workouts suck and they're super fatigued from them. So it's great that you're doing that. Now, right after your workouts, like I said, I think during your workouts, you can have more calories in there in the form of liquids. And then in your lunches, you can even, after those workouts, you can add some more carbs in there too, like your crackers or whatever, or an apple.
Hmm.
And then the main thing here is your afternoons, because I do think it's important for you to have snacks every day.
Yeah.
Um, but on your days when you're going to work, so you're you're going to your second job. So you're having your breakfast at 8:30 or 9, you're having your lunch at around 1, and then you're having your dinner at 4:30. I think that's fine. Like you're within the 3 to 5 hours I really like to see people eating. And
Hmm.
I'm so glad that you're doing that. But then after that, I'm assuming, do you have a dinner when you come back?
No,
Are you
usually I just like go to bed.
are you hungry at that point?
Yes,
Yeah.
usually.
So I
But
would say have something.
okay. Yeah,
What were you
because
going to say?
I
What?
try not to I try not to eat super close to bedtime because I noticed that if I do eat really close to when I go to sleep, I tend to not sleep as well, or I'll like wake up in the middle of the night or something like that too. So that's something I do struggle with, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah. And on those days, you are going to work at what? At like 5:30 or
Yeah,
something?
like 5:30, 6 o'clock,
And then when do you get done?
like 9 usually. So, and then it's about an hour drive home from there.
Okay. So could you have um a bar or
Yeah,
a
I could
snack?
probably do something in the car on the way
Yeah.
home for sure. I think that's a bit more reasonable.
Yeah.
But once again, planning.
Right, right. Or just like keep a bunch of bars in your car. Because it doesn't
Hmm.
need to be big. I'm thinking something like 300 calories or something.
Hmm.
And that's gonna just make you feel better the next day.
Okay, cool.
And if you weren't training so much and climbing so much, it wouldn't be as big of a deal and you probably wouldn't feel it quite as much, but you have
Hmm.
to be on it every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that
Um
makes
th-
sense.
Through all of this, what has your weight done? Like since you've started training differently in March, has anything, or do you even track your weight?
Yeah, actually a little bit. Funny enough, since I started this training program, I'm actually at my heaviest climbing weight ever, but also climbing the absolute hardest I ever have.
Okay.
So, uh, that's why I say that I am pretty content with that. I think that was just a factor of definitely putting on a little bit of muscle in
Mhm.
the through the course of training.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, I guess I have also noticed that like in the past it was easier for me to maintain a weight around 175
Mhm.
versus one fluctuating kind of between 183 and 187 pounds right now. So I started the training cycle at around 180. So I was like, oh, that's nothing too crazy, but that was about 5 pounds heavier than I had typically been in the past. So
And
yeah,
are you noticing that in the form of muscle or in the form of fat on your body?
I I think a little of both.
Okay.
Yeah, a little of both
Yeah.
potentially.
And so I'm not focusing on this because I, the only thing that I'm concerned about is like some of the things that I've told you to do are eating more calories.
Hmm.
And mostly what I want you to do is balance out your meals so that they're more even
Yeah.
so that we aren't adding more calories cuz the last thing I want to do is put fat on you when you're trying to climb your hardest. Um so that's kind of what I'm talking about there, but I just in terms of the weight, sometimes when you start training like that, you can uh, start to retain water because
Hmm.
you're a little bit more inflamed.
Yeah.
And so, things that will help with recovery, you might start taking BCAAs and
Hmm.
make sure they don't have creatine in them too, because that'll put more water weight on you. But just anything that's gonna help you flush that out. So how much water are you drinking every day?
Uh like 3 of the big Nalgene's or
Okay.
so. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's great.
Hmm.
I think having some more electrolytes in your diet will help you because that's also what the vegetables are going to give you. And you're not
Okay.
really getting very much potassium or magnesium or anything like that. Magnesium might help with the soreness too, like
Okay.
getting a magnesium bisglycinate supplement. There's one by Pure Encapsulations on Amazon that I like, and you would take like 400 milligrams at night. It's not the kind that's going to give you diarrhea. and it will help you sleep even better. And
Cool.
it will help with like muscle recovery and soreness. So those are some things. And that's what also why I recommended the Scratch Labs rehydration. And I don't care if it's noon or whatever. I have no affiliation with Scratch Labs. I just really like it myself. But that's also going to give you some of those electrolytes, and all of that I think can help with like any retention of water, inflammation, like recovery stuff. But what do you
Okay.
think about that?
Yeah, that sounds really easy. Scratch also just tastes good.
Yeah, I
So
know.
it's nice
It's
to
like lemonade.
exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So going forward, what are a few things that you're going to change, if any, given our conversation?
Number one, it sounds like I should add more vegetables to just all of my meals, truthfully. I don't mind the feeling of being a little full going into a warm up. Like, it just means I'm going to warm up a little bit longer until I don't feel quite so full. So the warm up might take an hour instead of 30 minutes. Um, and then trying to time my meals so that one, I eat before training, but two, it's instead of think like, oh, protein immediately after, get that full meal. That sounds really easy. Just instead of, because I'm always hungry after a big session anyway. So instead
Well,
of like something easy like the protein shake, make sure I'm getting my lunch in then instead.
and
And then
extra carbs in your
yeah,
lunch. Yeah.
yeah, extra
Mhm.
carbs too.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
that's the most important thing after your workout is more
okay,
carbs.
perfect. And then I think the snacks, it sounds like they're timed well. It's just balancing out a little bit more, as you said, right?
Mhm.
So more more basically the same three things that the carbs, fats, and proteins that I get in every meal, just smaller because it's a snack, it's not a full meal.
Right.
So yeah, so trying to, I guess, really do like fruit. So I think adding some fruit in there, as well as the protein powder and yeah, just kind of playing with it too and like finding what works for me. I've been experimenting with different snacks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, that all sounds great.
Sweet.
I hope
Amazing.
I hope that it helps. Yeah. Um it and I do recommend, so I'm not a huge fan of diet logging for long periods of time, and I don't see you doing that, but moving forward when you're changing these things, it can be super helpful to just log for a while, or like check in a couple times a week and just see if you're hitting these goals.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know that in the past I've used MyFitnessPal, and I'll do a few days here and a few days there just to recheck in to make sure I'm still eating how I think I'm eating and not just blowing up my diet.
Yeah, I know it's really easy to do, especially with a varied schedule like you have where you're not eating
Hmm.
the same exact things every day.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any last questions?
No, I think you've answered everything, and this all sounds like a really good plan moving forward.
Okay, cool. I'm going to stop sharing. So again, I just want to recap the main things that I think you should do just so that you can hear them one more time. But number one, I think your breakfast should be a little bit bigger, and make sure that you're getting, I mean, for you, with your protein amount, like the size of your body, I would say that 125 grams of protein a day is kind of your minimum. And I would
Hmm.
more shoot for like 130 to 140. And then a lot of
Okay.
days you're getting 145, which is great. But I do think that's going to help when you're in this training and climbing. Um, so that means that your breakfast needs to have a little bit more protein and more carbs in it. And that'll make it bigger so that it's more evened out.
Okay.
Your lunches, I think, can add more carbs, so in the form of fruit or crackers, and after your training sessions, definitely do that, but also add the stuff during the training sessions. Your snacks, yes, you could add a little bit of protein in them, and that's when you could get a little bit more for your
Hmm.
overall totals. And then your dinners are totally fine, but they could be smaller, and they will not need to be as big once you're eating more during the day. So
Mhm.
just evening out your calorie numbers. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I want to thank you again for letting us do this publicly. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, just email me. And also, if you want to give me an update in a couple weeks, I would love that. And then I could share it also on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to give you an update.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Alex. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.